Um, seven rulers of Phoenicia, Philistia, and Transjordan voluntarily came to submit to Sennacherib. Sennacherib then marched south to Philistia, and we should ask ourselves through where, conquered Ashkelon, subdued Ekron, defeated the Egyptian and Cushite forces in a pitched battle, and subdued Judah. Doesn't work. Okay. The most extensive group of Neo-Assyrian reliefs known appear in Sennacherib's southwest palace at Nineveh, excavated by Layer during the seasons of 1847 to 1851. About 70 rooms were decorated with wall reliefs, mostly war reliefs. In the mid-1960s, Madloom re-excavated the throne room suite. To date, the most thorough studies of the palace and those of Russell and Barnett, Bleibtreu, and Turner. The palace of Sennacherib was thoroughly burned during the fall of Nineveh in 612 BCE. Thus, most of the reliefs were badly cracked and their surface scarred by the heat. Sennacherib began the construction of this palace early in his reign. Most of his military reliefs can be associated with his first three campaigns against Babylonia, the Zagros Mountains and the Levant. The fourth campaign to Babylonia and the fifth campaign to the north may have been the subjects of some of the reliefs in other rooms. Sennacherib's third campaign was depicted on reliefs in his royal palace at Nineveh. The most famous and elaborately studied room depicting an episode from Sennacherib's third campaign is room 36, which you can see, you see that, okay, is this room, which showed the conquest of Lachish. Additional rooms in the palace, that is rooms 8, 10, and 12, here, and probably rooms 24, 34, 35, and 41, here, and parts of 43 and 44 depicted the third campaign as well. The throne room depicts two campaigns. The reliefs on the western wall depict the fifth campaign of Sennacherib against the north. The third campaign was depicted on the eastern wall. The relief slabs were numbered by Russell 20A to 33, but here you can see also that they are until 37. Yeah? From here, 20A to 37. In my analysis, I follow this numbering. At least 3 episodes of the third campaign were recorded in the throne room, actually 4. 1, the escape. Do I have this? No. The escape of Luli from the kingdom of Sidon, that is slabs 20A to 21 here. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. 2, the pitched battle at El Teke against the Egyptian Cushite army. 3, the surrender of the city without any attempt to conquer it by force, slab 28. Just to note that a few weeks ago, there was a big buzz that somebody, a scholar named Compton, identified this as Jerusalem. Well, as you can see here, I think he's totally wrong, and Jerusalem is supposed to be here. And you can see how big this scene was supposed to be, at least. The reliefs between doorway A and doorway B did not survive, and they may have depicted the surrender of Jerusalem. In the following, I will analyze the Phoenician episode in Sennacherib's annals and reliefs. So, the fate of the kingdom of Sidon. This is the original, well, the first text, the earliest text. On my third campaign, I marched to the land of Hatti. Fear of my lordly brilliance overwhelmed Luli, the king of the city of Sidon, and he fled afar into the midst of the sea. The description of the flight of Luli was updated in subsequent display versions. In the annals dated to 697, it is stated that he fled and disappeared at sea, went to his fate, Shadashu Emid. A summary inscription on a human-headed winged bull, inscribed in late 695, stated that Luli fled far away to Yadanna, that is Cyprus. Bull inscription 4 adds that he fled from the city of Tyre, and that is here at the main entrance to the throne room. The escape, these are the reliefs of in the throne room. The escape of a fleet of ships from a town on the coast is depicted in the throne room, as you have seen already yesterday. The scene begins at doorway C of the throne room, that is where a bull colossus stands on the right side of the entranceway. Jeffers noted numerous vertical lines, in which you can see here, between the slab edge and the back of the bull colossus on the right third of slab 21. He identified these lines as possible depictions of water, which indicate that the besieged city was surrounded by water at both doorways C and D. So here and here, there's water. Reflecting an island. The scene begins in the corridor with slab 21 and continues around the corner to the northern eastern corner of the throne room with slabs 20D to 20A. The slab is divided into 3 extant bands. Here you can see it, 3 extant bands. It is unclear whether there was an additional band at the level of the colossus head. The upper band depicts the mountainous landscape with trees in the distance. These trees can be compared to the cedar trees on the weathered Wadi Brisa relief of Nebuchadnezzar II, as you can see on the right. The middle band depicts Assyrian soldiers attacking from right to left. The lower band shows the deportees walking from left to right. In the middle of the lower band of slab 20D, Assyrian archers are depicted attacking the besieged town on the left. These forces are the continuation of the Assyrian soldiers on slab 21 around the corner. The lower band of slab 21 depicts the deportation of captives who are being led to the right, away from the city. On the right half of the lower band of slab 20D, a group of deportees are led from left to right in the direction of the Assyrian king sitting on his throne. Adjacent to these reliefs were 2 additional slabs that did not survive. Sorry. Two adjacent slabs. What's happening here? Yeah. 2 adjacent slabs that did not survive following their discovery, but were fortunately drawn. Slab 20B depicts a walled city with towers and crenellations protected with round shields, typical of the way Western towns are depicted in Assyrian art. The city's depiction continues in slab 20C and represent the target of the Assyrian onslaught. The highest part of the city possesses a monumental structure with an arched gate that has a flat roof with a rounded cornice, and 2 columns on either side of this passageway, as was mentioned yesterday. Scholars have suggested identifying this building with the Temple of Melkart in Tyre. This building is also depicted in a relief of Sargon II, showing the transport of timber here on the right. Jeffers identified traces of a siege ramp leaning against the city to the right of the building on the middle band. The walls of the city are empty and there is no resistance to the Assyrian soldiers. On the left side of the city, a man standing on the quay, just outside the gate, helps a child board a cargo ship, placing it in the hands of a woman. 10 Phoenician ships were represented sailing the sea towards doorway D, the farthest point from the king's throne at the opposite exit of the throne room, symbolizing his flight out of the king's reach. These reliefs were identified as the flight of Luli from Tyre. In the absence of proof that Tyre was conquered in 701 BCE, its identification in the reliefs is unsure, and thus Luli may have escaped from Sidon. Nevertheless, Bull inscription 4 explicitly states that Luli escaped from Tyre. Jeffers suggested that following the death of Luli, Bull inscription 4 and the reliefs in the throne room were updated to show the conquest of Tyre. I'm inclined to agree with this suggestion, and I do it hesitantly. The episode concerning the kingdom of Sidon continues and elaborates on the destiny of a list of towns from that kingdom that were overwhelmed by the might of Assyria. The list is organized from north to south, commencing with Sidon, indicating that the area north of Sidon belonged to a different Phoenician kingdom. Some scholars postulated that following Luli's escape, the towns of his kingdom surrendered without resistance. However, several hints suggest that these towns showed some resistance. The phrase, "the awesome terror of the weapon of the god Ashur, my lord," which is used to describe the overwhelming of the cities of the kingdom of Sidon, appears in Assyrian documents in a few instances. In all cases, it suggests surrender after conflict. Oded Tammuz attributes the narrative in Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews 9 to Sennacherib's third campaign rather than the reign of Shalmaneser V. He proposes that mainland cities submitted to Assyria peacefully and engaged in struggle against Tyre. These may be the Phoenician kingdoms to the north of Sidon. Antiquities, paragraph 284, explicitly states that the Assyrian king forcefully overran all of Phoenicia before eventually reaching a peaceful settlement with all its cities except Tyre. The confrontation with the kingdom of Sidon is depicted on the reliefs in the throne room and rooms 12, 10, and 8 of Sennacherib's palace. Room 12 is an elongated corridor that contains scenes belonging to the Phoenician episodes. 16 reliefs were identified in this room, all of which seem to depict the conquest of a single city. Slabs 11 to 15 depict the conquest of a town next to a watercourse. The city's architecture is characteristic of the Levant. On either side of the city, siege ramps extend upwards toward the upper part of the city, leading to a citadel that was not preserved in the relief. The ramp intersects a watercourse, the mound, and the city wall, targeting a fortress within the city. Assyrian soldiers lead the parties along the straight upper bank of the watercourse towards the right. The city's wall is positioned above them on a tell. While it is possible that the right side of the watercourse was also vertical, the relief's illustrations seem to indicate a discontinuity at this point. It appears that the watercourse doesn't flow through the city, as scholars have previously described. Okay. The preserved lower parts of slabs 11 and 12 depict a row of soldiers advancing towards the right with only their legs and kilts preserved. The right part of the slab 12 depicts a watercourse enclosing the walls of a city at a right angle. The city's defenders are visible at the top of the battlements. The watercourse originated vertically on the left side of the city walls, took a rightward turn, traversing the relief from one side to the other. So here you can see it on the left. In an alternative drawing of slab 12, the drawing exhibits traces of siege ramp rising from the left to the right. The wall in the lower part of slab 13 is not depicted as a straight line, but is rather curvilinear. The lower bank of the watercourse displays a wavy pattern symbolizing the sea. Soldiers with crested helmets holding spears and shields stand atop the towers. Along the walls are kneeling soldiers, possibly equipped with bows. These might represent Assyrian forces stationed on a siege wall intended to blockade the besieged city. The fortification depicted in the lower section of the relief do not form a part of the city in the upper part of the relief. It appears to be separated from the besieged town by the watercourse and remains unaffected by the Assyrian assault. The city remains unidentified. However, it can be inferred to have been located within the Sidonian territory. Notable cities such as Greater Sidon, Lesser Sidon, Bet Zait, Tzarepta, Machaliba, Ushu, Arzib, and Akko are mentioned in the text. However, no river flows through any of them. I would tentatively propose that the upper fortification, which is under attack, represents an island. Thus, it is possible to identify the lower city as mainland Tyre, with the town being conquered maritime Tyre. As mentioned before, Jeffers suggested identifying the town in the throne room from which Luli fled as Tyre, as explicitly stated in the bull inscription 4. The depiction in room 12 might also have shown the Assyrian conquest of the island. In both cases, the city is besieged with the aid of a ramp and surrounded by water. This representation appears to be an updated account of Tyre's fate following its surrender after the death of Luli in 696. Slab 15, adjacent to slab 14, exhibits Assyrian soldiers transporting spoils toward the right. In the upper register, among them, 2 carry a statue likely of a god. This statue is smaller than life-size, with only the lower portion of the depiction preserved. 2 rows of male and female deportees are positioned alongside and guided towards the right by Assyrian soldiers. The female deportees are adorned with tall cylindrical headdresses, along with veils cascading down their backs, similar to the women in room 1 depicted on the Phoenician ships. These deportees are unmistakably Phoenician. In the account of the Phoenician conquest, it is specified that the Assyrian armies reached areas of pasture and water. This is likely the hinterland to the east of Sidon. Room 8, slabs 11 to 15, depict a campaign against the maritime people. Their ships and costumes resemble those seen in room 1. The lower section of the reliefs 11, 12, and 13 exhibit at least 5 Phoenician war galleys, each manned with armed warriors navigating the sea. In the upper bands, the relief depicts battles between local inhabitants and Assyrian forces in the mountainous landscape. Among these scenes are Phoenician warriors equipped with bows as well as spears and shields engaged in pitched battle against Assyrians. Slab 13 presents Assyrian horsemen positioned beside their horses, evidently prepared to navigate the mountainous terrain. There are no depictions of siege warfare in this room. Instead, the battles were fought inland on open terrain. It appears that the Assyrians ventured into the mountainous regions of Lebanon, where they also felled cedar wood. After Luli's escape to Cyprus, Sennacherib appointed a new king to rule over the kingdom of Sidon. The new king at Baal was required to provide an annual tribute. He was not held accountable for any prior debts or transgression. כמעט. 8 vassal rulers from Phoenicia, Philistia, and Transjordan paid tribute to Sennacherib. The annals don't specify a precise location where the submissive rulers paid their tribute. However, a summary inscription engraved on Bull Colossus 4 composed states that the tribute was brought in the plain of the city of Ushu. The depiction of the scene preserved in room 8 east begins on the southern wall with slab 4 and continues to the right to slab 3. I will only talk about slab 3. 7 unarmed figures dressed in varied attire, none of which bears scepters or arms, are depicted leaving the royal tent. Some scholars have proposed that they are Assyrian officials or the king's bodyguards. However, the geographical, textual, and architectural context seem more fitting to identify this scene with the submission of the Levantine kings in Phoenicia, corresponding with the details found in the royal annals. The 7 individuals are likely the 7 kings, as per Sennacherib's annals, who journeyed to Ushu to present their tribute. The discrepancy between the 8 rulers named in the annals and the 7 figures presented in the reliefs may thus be explained either by the prior submission of Et Baal, who is out of, or by normal numerical variation within the royal inscriptions. Phoenicia, along with other parts of the Levant, yielded without resistance. This development enabled Sennacherib to proceed southwards, engaging the kingdoms of Ashkelon and Ekron in Philistia, as well as Judah. And the only question is how they got from Ushu to Ashkelon. Nothing is mentioned in between, but that is for others to find out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was fascinating to see how you're able to analyze picture and text together. I'm sure that there are questions.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for the fascinating talk. Just one minor vocabulary change on the ships. The one where the child is being lowered down. Instead of a cargo ship, I would refer to it as a Phoenician bireme, I believe. The oars. Yeah, but it has 2 sets of oars, which makes it a bireme. A cargo ship would not have been powered by oars. Anyway, it's nitpicky, but people who study ships would ding you on it. So I'm giving you a freebie. And as a person,
would it be
do you mind putting the picture back up?
Yeah. Would it be military or would it be?
No, there were also transport ships that were.
But they could be convoy ships in the fleet, carrying all kind of equipment and also soldiers, and provide food and other need for the soldiers, for the mariners.
You skipped ahead too, I think. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's also fascinating. So this, of course, the women with the same kinds of hats are on that ship as well. So anyway, beautifully done. And as someone who worked at Ashkelon and as Doug, that 604 destruction, I'm glad you stopped your paper. Thank you. Would anybody else like the mic?
Yes.
I just want to note while the mic is going around that Luli is not depicted here. And the point that is not depicted here is that the Assyrians show only kings when they are submitting. And he's not submitting, he's escaping, so it's better not to show it. And he also disappeared.
Arif, תודה רבה. 2 comments. At Shikmona, which as you know is on the Carmel coast, we have a destruction layer that on archaeological grounds may be dated around 700, so maybe 701.
I was hinting to this is a possible route.
So maybe this is a hint. Now we proceeded south. The other comment is apropos when I'm thinking of the wind regime from Sidon, the question is, do we know the season when all this happened? Because the chance that you decide on a specific day you're going to leave Sidon and reach Cyprus and have the correct wind to do it is slim.
That is true. When I taught about the Lachish reliefs, there are grapes there. So I said, well, this is the season of the grapes. It was at the end of the year. You go to the supermarket, you have grapes there. And one of the students who was in Kibbutznik, he said, you know, the grapes in the Lachish area, they're already in May ripe. So I said, well, I don't know. I don't see the grapes there now. I didn't see them in May. So he phoned his friend from Lachish, and they said, yeah, the grapes are ready in May. Is it May? Could be. That's might be, sometimes in May you have eastern winds, which can bring you all the way to Cyprus. But you're totally right. I mean, to get to Cyprus, as in Venamun's tale, you need the right wind.
May I?
Yes.
Because this is in response to Ayelet. I can just shout in case you hadn't noticed. Okay, sorry, no, it's fine. So that actually leads perfectly to this very vessel, because there is no sail, correct?
At the moment,
So,
yes.
right, but in
But
an
they're not going
urgent-
to row all the way to Cyprus.
Well, but if you're fleeing from Tyre and you hop into a ship with oars, you don't need to depend on the wind. Nachon? I mean, it's a long way to row, but it's better than being killed. So,
Telling you as somebody who rowed from Akko to Haifa, believe me, you don't want to do it all the way to Cyprus.
okay, so then you row out to a safe distance?
Yes.
Because the Assyrians do many things, but they don't sail. And then you put up the
I'm asking myself
sail.
what those two
Yeah, you're right.
ships on the left are.
Sorry,
I'm asking myself what those two ships on the left are.
well,
I don't
won't
know.
repeat it in polite company. If you could put the bigger picture up, I might help.
Sorry, it's
Oh, that's,
no. Yeah, but
well, let's see.
they're going that direction, not that direction.
Right.
But still,
But see, they already have their sails up. Partially, it's in the triangular form. I mean, the
I'm
ones
not
that are
sure. I'm
marked,
not sure the sail is. It's
no, but the
No,
ones marked,
it's too small.
the ones marked ASS in red with a
Yes.
question mark, both
Yes.
have their sails up in a triangular form.
There's no difference between them and the other two. You can't see. We can't see it here, so
Yeah,
we can
okay.
continue this later.
We might want to have some more questions, Paula,
Paula, yes.
and then Alex, and then.
About the city that
Yes.
had a river flowing through it. There is one.
Yes.
Rabban many years ago published in his surveys at Achziv evidence, or at least what he believed are evidence for rerouting the Kziv River to produce tunnels to, I don't know how to translate this. It's a technical term. The idea was to bring water from the river to drain the harbor, so it will not be clogged by sand, because all of these harbors are sediment traps. Of course, none of this could be archaeologically dated, but there is one city which is a harbor and has a river possibly going through it.
In the middle of the city?
Yes.
No.
That's
Paula,
Cartago. That's
No, no.
Cartago, that's Cartago.
No.
The tunnel, staff found the person who did it, and the Rabban was wrong. No, Rabban was wrong.
Living it.
Thank you, Daniel, for this talk. Just a short question about this identification that you mentioned of Compton, that I think
Yes.
you rightly dismissed the identification of Jerusalem, but what about the Battle of El Tequeh, Lab 24?
Yes.
Is it Battle of El Tequeh in your
Sure.
opinion?
I'm sure it is. It's going to be published in the conference proceedings.
No,
Nubin mine.
He identified this as the
It's
Battle of El Tequeh.
not only him.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was identified some times ago by Vidal. I was preparing a paper on that, and then I came across his article and said, "Oh, he already did that." But I'm publishing also a paper about that and about the Jerusalem
Response
Yes.
to his
Well, it's not
identification.
responsive. It is already accepted, so it was before he published his paper,
Thank you.
but it takes some time.
One short one there.
Thanks so much. Just a quick comment. I don't recall, in fact, I'm pretty sure that Sennacherib does not give the month that he leaves Nineveh. It just starts with third campaign, which is anyway, a development within the Assyrian analytic process. But if we go back to earlier kings, they are starting their campaigns from Nineveh in the spring. And so with the distance, it would make some logical sense to, and so in a sense, it's a back argument, but it's an argument that nonetheless perhaps has some weight to go with the grapes in Lachish.
There's a song in Hebrew by, נו, קוראים לה, לא, איך קוראים לה? מלחמות לא עושים בחורף? C.A. Mann, right. About, by C.A. Mann singing that you don't, basically you're not supposed to do wars, conduct wars in the winter, not in the summer. So.
Usually, of course, for example, in Sparta, the wars were carried during the summer. Because,
it's a bit colder there than here.
In
Yes.
the autumn, they had to go to the fields and cut
The whole idea of doing it in the spring, basically is that you cut the wheat and not the peoples of the besieged city. ילד רצתה עוד איזה משהו, לא? לא? תודה רבה.
Thank you so much. With the spectacular C.A. Mann quote, we move to the second speaker or point of the University of Haifa. Is corpus Molech, understanding Molech through the lenses of cultural relativism and comparative Semitic linguistics.
Okay. Okay, good morning. Let's give a good look on these two pictures on the board. In a first look, they look completely different, isn't it? On the right, there is a lot of noise, fire, maybe horror, and on the left, on your left, there is a silence, pity. What we have here are two pictures that describe Molech, or on the left side. This is a picture from the 19th century. Try to imagine the Tophet and the Molech. And on the left, we have the Christian ceremony in which the priest is giving the believer the bread and said the Latin word, hoc est corpus. This is the body. Take a good look on the right side, on the Christian, hoc est corpus, okay? On the left. Hocus pocus is considered to be a mocking term for the hoc est corpus ceremony. It appeared in history in the first written evidence that we have for this hocus pocus is during the beginning of the 17th century, something like 60 years after the separation of the Anglican Church from the Roman. And what we try to suggest today is that the process, the cultural process of moving from hoc est corpus, from the procedures of est corpus to the hocus pocus might be the same process that we are witnessing with the term molech. Okay, this is what I would like to suggest today. Cultural relativism. I have to mention here a very important figure in the field of anthropology, Franz Boas, considered to be one of the fathers of anthropology in the United States. And he said, if we were to select the most intelligent, imaginative and energetic and emotionally stable third of the mankind, all races would be present. And at least in my perspective, that includes the Phoenician. Cultural relativism is the idea that persons' belief, values, and practice should be understood based on their own culture, rather than judged against the criteria of another. It emphasizes that no culture is inherently superior and promotes the understanding and tolerance of cultural differences. And I think that what we will hold today on the one hand is the conception, the anthropology conception of cultural relativism. And on the other hand, we will see, but we have to take into consideration that the picture that we saw before might be a big misunderstanding of the term molech. Let's see what we have until today in the research. The first systematic description of the mem lamed chaf word that appears in Phoenician inscription was put forward by the biblical research Otto Eisfeldet in 1935. By the way, the only copy of this book in Israel, I believe, is in the National Library in the Gershon Scholem room. And you can see or you don't see, but there is a Nazi stamp on the cover. I was amazed to see that. What Eisfeld said is something that is really became accepted, is that mem lamed chaf in the Phoenician inscription is a terminus technicus. It's not a god. It's a word that describes or an action or a category of something, of some action, but it's not the god itself. A year after the publication of this book, Wolfram von Soden, the renowned Assyriologist, wrote a review for the book, and he was the first one to suggest that the root of the word is halach or yalach in Phoenician. So we have a prefix mem, it might be the participle or nominal prefix, plus the root halach. The gutturals can be disappeared very easily in the Phoenician language. A third article, which is worth mention, is the article by Moshe Weinfeld, who gave us the understanding that we should really separate between the Phoenician term and the biblical one. These three assumptions, I believe, are truth. They are all right. But all the three of them are missing something very, very deep. And that's something that really has to do with the identity, with the question of identity, which stands at the heart of what we are trying to do here in this conference and in the groups, in the two groups, research groups. It means something very deep because it comes from an ethic perspective. In anthropology, ethic perspective means that you're coming from outside. that you describe the culture from an outside perspective. Let's see this outside. Ethic or exogenous biblical perspective. Can I move this? Okay, I will tell you the title. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, ואל בני ישראל תאמר, איש איש מבני ישראל ומן הגר הגר בישראל, אשר ייתן מזרעו למולך, מות יומת, עם הארץ ירגמו באבן, ואני אתן את פניי באיש ההוא, והכרתתי אותו מקרב עמו, כי מזרעו נתן למולך. And so on and so forth. These are very important, very known verses. So, the perspective that we all adopt here, I mean, all of us, is based on the condemnation of that we find in the Bible. But from an anthropology perspective, this is an ethic attitude toward this concept. Now, let's imagine that there was a person who lived 2,500 years ago who wrote this inscription. There was a guy. And the question that I would like to raise today is, what was his emotional feeling concerning the word molech, or if we are following von Soden, mahalach, that appears here? I'm reading it for the convention as it is Hebrew, okay? Azram ish besaram bitam naso laelim bemolech. What is his emotional feeling? Is it this one? When you wrote this word, this one? This one? We have to admit that we don't know. We have to admit that we don't know when we are. How can we pass the fog that history put between us and these relics? How can we reach our hand and pass the fog and try to understand or try to feel what was the word molech for the people who wrote this word on these inscriptions? This is my third lecture here in these two groups, and in the previous two lectures, I tried to deal with two words. One is the verb nadar, neder, and the other one is the enigmatic word azram. In the two cases, I suggested that the Semitic root is a very good place to start. Because the Semitic root, or what is a root? For linguistics, a root is a semantic morpheme. And this semantic morpheme has a lot of information inside it. And if we are taking the information that we can gain from the root, we can understand a lot of things that have been covered in history. So what do we know about the root halach? If we read the usual interpretation for this root, and that we have here for Paulo Cella, the term comes from the root halach, to go. Here is a casual participle with the original meaning of what is sent. To become a technical sacrificial term used only in the context of the Tophet. As you can see, Cella here follows both Eisfeld and von Soden. Exactly the same. A well-known phenomena for linguistics and biblical scholars is that the semantic field of a root is something that can be studied from a comparative Semitic perspective. Because many times when you want to dive into the meaning of a root, it's not enough to look just at the Hebrew or Phoenician or Arabic. We take all the ancient languages and suddenly the picture becomes much more clear. And this is what I will try to suggest today, that we should look in comparative Semitic for the meaning of this root, and there might be a direction there. So the meaning of to walk by foot, it's the regular meaning of the verb. But very surprisingly, in biblical Hebrew, it is very, very common that the verb halach, or the root halach, is connected with the acceptance of God's ways. בחוקותיהם לא תלכו, את משפטיי תעשו ואת חוקותיי תשמרו ללכת בהם, and so on and so forth. Very, very common. Not only the acceptance of the rule of God, also of the forefather. הלך בדרכי דוד אביו, במצוותיו הלך, וילך בדרכי דוד אביו. Let's see the emotional field in which the root appears. לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו וליראה אותו. לעבדיך הולכים לפניך בכל ליבם. This is the emotional field in which the root halach appears, loving God, fearing God, with all their heart, devotion to God. I'm leaving to you to decide what is the emotional attitude. It's not only Hebrew. If we are raising the perspective to other Semitic languages, for example, Ugaritic, you can see here, I'm reading it like it is Hebrew, okay, for the convention. Netivot bet Baal nitalech. Okay, the pathway of the temple of Baal we shall follow. So also in Ugarit, it is very common that to walk means to follow the way of God, to follow the right way, and so on and so forth. The same thing in Akkadian. Okay, in Akkadian we have the verb alaku, we have alaktu, which is equivalent to Hebrew alacha. Alak ili, follow the way of God. In akinatim ilag, I will live in righteousness. So you can see that it's not only a Hebrew issue, it's a common Semitic a semantic shift or semantic field, okay, that we can draw everything. This is very important, the evidence of the post-biblical Hebrew, or the Mishnah Hebrew. We have the word halacha, which comes from the same root. שהיה משה אומר להם לישראל, הלכות פסח בפסח, הלכות עצרת בעצרת, הלכות חג בחג. Halacha are the religious law. Halacha is also the part of that deals with the law. And כרם שנטוע כהלכתו means properly. Okay, we have here a semantic shift from the concrete things into the abstract one. So it can represent not only the laws, it can be also equivalent to properly in accordance with the law and justice. And this is very important. What we have in Phoenician, beside molech, we have ulech, or this root connected with hospitality. Hospitality is also something that have to do with the right order. I recommend a book by Jacques Derrida. Okay, you deal with the concept of hospitality, and he described the connection between achnasat orchim and the social structure. So what do we have in the Semitic background? What is the meaning of the root alach? What is the meaning of the root alach? Walking, yes, it is there. Okay, it is important. But also acceptance of God's ways, acceptance of the way of the forefather, pursuit of justice, hospitality, observance of God's laws, commandment, and by extension, the laws and the statutes themselves. Let's look at the Phoenician text. And once again, I will read it like it is a Hebrew text, okay? Netziv, not molech, but allow me, mahalach Baal, esh sam nachum leBaal chamon adono. I would like to suggest that we are translate that in a wrong way. We should translate molech or mahalach as the precept concerning Baal, and in Hebrew the equivalence will be matzevat hilchat Baal. And that goes with what we see in Akkadian, alakti ili, ilchat ilim. By the way, we just a group of students from Haifa University. The previous one is a text from Malta. We just saw that in the Valletta Archaeological Museum 2 weeks ago. Netziv mahalach emar, matzevat hilchat keves, or the precept concerning love, and compare that to what we find in rabbinical Hebrew. אמר רבי פנחס, לא אסר בירמיהו, אלא משום הלכת פטיש. לאדון, לבעל הקדוש, ביום נעים, למהלך. I believe that the translation should be לאדון לבעל הקדוש ביום נעים, להלכה, כלומר כהלכה. And compare that to the rabbinical Hebrew, כרם שנטוע כהלכתו. These are the two options. We can treat Molech as hocus pocus, as with a mocking perspective. Okay, and we left with Molech Emar, Molech Adam, Molech Basar. These are all terms that Eisfeld discussed. At the same time, we can speak about Hilchat Keves, Hilchat Adam, Hilchat Basar, Hilchat Baal, Hilchat Azram Ish, La Halacha, Ka Halacha, Hilchat X. Compare that. This is only a very, very small examples from the rabbinical Hebrew. Hilchat Aris, Hilchat Rofim, Hilchat Shchita, Hilchat Sota, Hilchat HaPesach, Hilchat Govrin Yehudiim, Hilchat Benot Israel, La Halacha, Behilchat X, very, very common. Kehilchat X, very, very common. Okay, and X can be many, many things. Okay, so I believe that the right way to understand the Mem Lamed Chaf occurrences in these is to compare them to the Hebrew word halacha. One final remark. Last night, we all celebrated the appearance of the Sfat Canaan, the book of Shmuel Achituv and Daniel Sivan. Unfortunately, Fabio spoke about the appearance of the discipline in Italy. The discipline of Phoenician studies, half of the room is archaeological. I know you are dealing with Phoenician. The problem is that biblical scholars and Hebrew scholars in Israel, it is still not a field. And that's, at least in my perspective, students of Professor Fassberg who sitting here today, and he taught me Phoenician. But I think that the best proof that this is not a discipline is the fact that this is not part of the mandatory courses that we take in our curriculum. It's only due to voluntary quest by Fassberg on the one hand, or Shmuel Achituv and Daniel Sivan, that Shmuel Achituv told us that this was the last year that he gave course. And I believe that it's not only that the Phoenician are need shift in our attitude, it's also we deserve this shift. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was expecting you to mention Akedat Yitzchak. Is there a reason why not?
Because it's too big. It's too big. I'm actually working on a book on the Tophet side in the last 5 years. It is much deeper than that. But yes, Akedat Yitzchak is part of the issue, and the main question that one should ask ourselves. And I will put it other way. One of the problems of the research of the Tophet is that for the last 150 years, we are struggling with one question: whether there was or there wasn't child sacrification in these sites. I'm not saying it's not interesting question, it is, but I'm trying to suggest that it's it blocked us.
I was